Well, good morning, Miss Takeisha Stokes. I'm really glad that you could spend some time with us today on our podcast. Please share a little bit about who you are and what kind of interesting work that you're doing presently.
Well, thank you for having me, Kevin and Shauna. I am a local here in Tallahassee, Florida, in the great Sunshine State, capital city. I am privileged to work in the legislative process here in Tallahassee as an analyst role primarily, and born and raised in Tallahassee. I've come and gone, and I've been back for some time now. And in fact, that's how we met in that cycle during a chamber tour. And I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, as an analyst, does that mean you are working in general for the legislature? Or are you assigned to a legislator or a committee, or is it more of a sort of a repository of folks that just gather information in a bipartisan way? How does that work?
Okay. So I like that word repository. The clerk's office, which is the more or less vacuum that I work under, the complement to the secretary's office in the Senate, the Florida Senate. We in the Florida House of Representatives have a clerk office that is a really strong administrative arm. And I must say, I have a 10-month-old puppy in my house who's periodically playing with toys. So I apologize for the ambient noise in the background. Um, but we serve all our 120 members, so that means Republicans and Democrats, as well as working in cohort with our Senate partners, the 40 senators there that are both House, that are both Democrat and Republican as well. And my particular role focuses on analyzing the bills with a team of people in both the House and the Senate and declaring how the bills are related to each other. So, in other words, the companion measures. How they intertwine, categorizing them as either linked, identical, similar, compare, um, based on language and objective. And that is the main bread and butter that I do. However, there are some bill action components to what I do, tracking and monitoring bills and adding live and post actions with our team on what's happening to any given version of the bill at any given time. And our office is known for its verification and custodial and public record and just records of the House retention as well. So we have an evolving door that all of us are a part of. The legal record, the Journal of the House of Representatives, which is the official legal record once it's been properly verified, et cetera, from day to day on the actions that are taking place on the floor of the House chamber, as well as introduction and continuing actions on bills that are happening alongside that and before and after that. And then, of course, the public engagement piece, which is where you and I met with me giving and assisting with a public house tour of our murals and our legislative process and the beautiful elements of our House chamber.
Wow, I need to unpack about four pieces of that. So let's go back.
Okay.
So I understand that when both chambers of the legislature introduce a bill or bills, then you compare them to see if they're similar. Is that was that correct?
Yes, to see, yeah, if they're similar, if they're
Mhm.
identical, meaning that their objective is the same, and there may be just a few, and there's a little insight knowledge. Sometimes the bill is saying identical, but that means there may be a subtle difference and say maybe one bill has shall, the other one may have must,
Mm,
right?
got it.
But essentially they mean the same thing and they're going in the same direction. We're going to declare those as identical. Similar would be they're substantially doing the same thing, maybe more or less the objective the same way, but there may be some minor substantive things that are different, right? But the greater part of it would be interchangeable and the same. And then
Do
we have compare. Mhm.
Right. Let me just jump in. Now, in the
Yeah.
federal side, we hear often about there'll be a House bill that passes and a Senate bill, but then they have to be reconciled. Are you
Uh-huh.
involved with reconciliation? Is that something the legislators do? Or can you guys just say these things we're going to call one thing? How does the reconciliation happen?
Yeah. So as a legislative employee, I have no part in any kind of influencing of how the bills come to be and how the members decide on them. That we're set apart from that. We don't get into that conflict of interest. So I strictly just take the bill as is. That would be on the member side to make your point clear, to make my response clear. So, but for me, I look at the bills and I say, hey. Um, as a whole, this is what we see these bills are going and how far apart they are or how close they are. And so that oftentimes what it does is lend itself to confirm maybe what the sponsors or the members' intended purpose is for the bills.
Mhm.
Um, or it could possibly cause them to say, oh, well, I need to make a few adjustments here because I intended for these bills to be a certain way. And now you're saying that they're not. And we thought that maybe they were, or because our drafting styles are different too, sometimes format wise, or even the way that things may be communicated through the trail of creating the bill right before it's actually filed, the drafting process,
Mhm.
which I have no part in. We just simply receive the bill once it's filed. We critically analyze it by either reading it in full or in part to get the gist of what it's doing on a substantive level. And then because of the structure we have in places for classifications, then we would choose which classification these bills fall into. And that's for every version of every bill, because a bill number is assigned once, but ideally, but unless
Right.
there's some kind of significant need to change it. But it could potentially go through several version cycles until either it dies or it becomes law.
Right. I'll ask questions, but if you feel they're on the edge of outside the box where you're comfortable, like with if there's anything that sounds partisan or anything, I'm going to try to avoid that. But I'm curious,
Okay.
do you ever see
Yeah,
a
because we're not
language?
partisan. Yeah.
Right. Do
Hmm.
you ever see language that says, well, it may just either have an error or it may have something that's like doesn't add up, like the economic impact. Like if it says this bill will do something like create some jobs or bring in some taxes or do something. But do you guys ever serve the role? I don't want to use the word fact check, but do you ever look at the
Hmm.
veracity of what you get or the somehow evaluate the truthfulness of it?
Not necessarily the precise role that I do in my team of 4 to 6 people, more or less, between the House and the Senate, or a little bit more than that. We don't get to that granular point, but we do have assigned analysts in both chambers that get to some of those issues you're talking about, where they are trained and they're experts in like constitutionality questions,
Mhm.
fiscal impact,
Right,
um, maybe talking points, or where the partisan parties would fall on this bill, how it would affect society, economic impact. So to your point, we have a variety of analysts throughout both sides, House and Senate, that do different roles. And mine just is more so focused on companions and actions, whereas
mhm.
theirs might be more of those technicalities that you're speaking to. So we all commit to our lanes.
Right, right.
Now, when it comes errors, like if I see a spelling error or something format, because I'm so familiar with the bills and the House format, that, and I know where certain things ought to be, um, that some things may stand out. And so thank God we have a great relationship with our bill drafting office, where I can reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed this. And then they appreciate that. And then they'll make amends to make right on that. And we have several checks and balances along the way that lend itself that we can catch those things and clean those up so that the people's work is in the right posture.
And this is really interesting. And frankly, you think about the visibility of politicians, but you guys are really working pretty quietly behind the scenes, aren't you? You don't really
Yes.
you're not really on the news a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yes, right. And some of us greatly like it that way. Others, they're kind of a combination, and maybe some of us may rise to the top, right, in terms of visibility, and be out front and center one day, because you do see that reoccurring theme. Sometimes people serve as aides or assistants. Next thing you know, they're running, they're in their member seat because their member termed out. But that's why the movie Hidden Figures, which has that aerospace dynamic that you all love so dearly and that I sparks my interest, and I'm still nowhere near as smart on it as you are. But I consider myself a hidden figure, in a lot of ways, and not just being a woman or being Black or, African American, but in the general role, because there's so many of us that fit that figure, and
Right.
especially in a body like the legislature. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do a little side pivot here. Number one, fantastic movie. Uh,
Yeah.
February is like African American History Month. So, and March is Women's Month. So at the end of February,
Yeah.
in my aerospace class for my sixth grade, we watch Hidden Figures. And then we watch
Oh,
Apollo 13 to give some really good, like
yeah.
the one is like a very positive, uplifting movie, but you see a lot of, frankly, in the control room, it's just all white men, right? It's a nice validation of
Mhm.
the themes and hidden figures that these women, you talk about an uphill battle. It was like they already were
Mhm.
stepping up to the plate with two strikes and blindfolded, and yet they still
That's
persevered.
right.
So,
Right, still making home runs, yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. And one last thought on that is I always ask my kids to guess which one is my favorite of those three characters. And my favorite of
Mm,
those women is Dorothy Vaughan, because not only was she
yeah,
extremely competent and intelligent, but she looked after her people and she took care of all of her people. I always thought
yes,
that's a good leader. She was not only was
yes.
she really focused, really intelligent, really principled, but she was a great leader because she looked after all of those the computers.
Amen to that. Amen
Yeah.
to that. Yeah, she was definitely a servant leader, and I took note to that in the film and the story of them, acting out that true story about her leadership there, and I couldn't agree with you more. Like, that really resonated with me, because so often I think that, you know, I know in the Black community, we coined this term crab mentality, right? When you make it, but you don't, but in order to make it, you somehow think that you have to like step on your other person's head, just, and hold them back. But I think, outside of just the African American vernacular and our personal cultural experience, it can reflect and apply other areas, and you see that sometimes in the office place. But when someone like her, understands the value, like you said, of reaching back and making sure that when I succeed, others should succeed, and they're just as competent and smart and individually blessed to be able to add something to the table, and we should take the utmost care of that, and help them to flourish as well. So yeah, I
Totally
love leaders
agree.
like that.
Totally agree. I work with really two kinds of students. I work with students that are upper middle class or just flat out affluent. And then I have a group of kids I work with that they have nothing. I meet them at a community center where they ride buses from school so they won't join gangs. And they try to give them clothes.
Mhm.
I'm not clothes. They have classes for them, finance, work with homework. They give them a place to hang out in the gym. They feed them sometimes. But these kids, I want them to understand that education can be a ticket for them for a different kind of life, and they need that. So I need part of the kids I work with need to understand that education is a pathway to give them a life that maybe they don't imagine they can have. But the affluent kids and the kids that have some means or they have strong home environments, they need to understand that they've got to do something to help make the world a little better, right? If you're already
Mhm. Yeah.
doing real well, why not help make the whole situation better for others? So
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
hard sometimes with kids who've never
Mhm.
never struggled, never worried. They don't understand. It's such an odd dynamic here in Palm Beach County, especially, right? We have this.
Mhm.
It is like there's no one in the middle, right? You're either pretty modestly living or you're a top
Right.
cat. Teachers are somewhere
Mm.
stuck in the middle, maybe closer to the
Yeah.
low end than the high end. But I
Mhm.
totally get what you're saying. Okay, so let's go back to this really interesting. You're somewhere. I'm imagining this role you take, which is vitally important to the legislative process, working totally under the radar, never causing controversy or anything like that. I would love, maybe offline we could learn some stories about when something really went sideways. But let me ask this. We have submitted, and so far I still see online, as you would mention, these web pages that show bills, but I looked at the appropriation. So we have an appropriations request that I think is still doing well on the House and the Senate side. We tried to write those identically, and I'm getting to the question here. We wrote them identically, but for some reason, one of them says so many thousands of dollars. Well, I'll just say $849,100, but the other one says $849,000. If they're both the same intent, right? It's basically the same program. We found a sponsor on each side. What is the process by which, if we are successful, that those, they won't say you get that or that. How do they reconcile that slight difference?
Well, I could not tell you precisely because it is a mixed bag, right? It's a delicate dance between the partners, of course. The members just right out of the box have their work cut out for them, making friends and making amends to get to a common end. That's a good way to sum it up. Of course, you have the leadership dynamic, you have timing dynamic, you have priorities within those timings, and so all those things have to factor in to how and how that will go out. So I cannot, because I'm not privy and I'm not part of that process, and it's outside of my scope to address that like dead on. But that gives you an idea of like the factors that are at hand to come to that term. It's simply an agreement. Somebody's going to have to yield to which appropriation, whether they choose one or the other, you know. And so most likely they could do one of two things. Now, session has ended for this term, so I, on behalf of you seeking, I just want to, send my condolences there that if it has not passed by now, it's not going to pass for the 2024 session because we signed died yesterday. But who's to say? It may, you may be able to file again, and we'll see what the membership decides in this coming session, right? Once we gavel in. But it's a delicate dance. They can do a formal substitution, and if they agree, in the body to lay down one bill and take the other and pass it as such. But it's really as simple as agreeing to which appropriation number they want. And for us, my particular role, what we would do is those bills would be automatically marked similar because the appropriation, while it's giving an appropriation, the amount is not the same. So there's clearly a difference in how much money would be allocated.
All right. Yeah. It was only $100, like much less than 1%. They had the same name.
Yeah.
Right. And we literally tried to use the exact same language with both of our sponsors. So that seems like that's a less difficult to bring together if it passed through the committees and went to the governor.
Yes.
Right? But only one of those would go to the governor, right? Both would not go to the governor because they're similar.
Correct. Only. Yes, sir. Yep. One's going to have to die in a sense. But the beauty of the process is that these, and what we do when we tie these bills, maybe your particular number did not pass, but oftentimes they can leverage that. Hey, well, my bill was similar to this bill's passed. So the language, the intent is still being done. And so that, I think that's a special thing that I contribute to for members and folks alike, right? That may not have their bill in the statute book or in the passage tent, like enrollment, but they do in other regards. Yes.
Great. All right. Here's an opinion question. I don't know if there is a correct answer. I don't know if but here, from your seat, when you see prospective legislation coming your way, who has more pull? A senior representative, maybe a chair of a committee, or a rookie senator? Because we know the senators, that's the higher chamber. But Is in the real working world, does a representative that has some tenure, maybe a committee chair, do they tend to have more sway, maybe even than a junior senator? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Kevin, if you would please, you kind of cut out
Oh,
towards the end. Could you maybe restate that last part about after you
yes.
said the rookie?
Yeah, so
Okay,
you have
thank you.
you have a rookie senator, and you have a very seasoned, experience, maybe a committee chair on the House side. How does their political power, how does it display itself with respect to bills? Does maybe a rookie senator have less power, political, horsepower than a legislator that's got a lot of time and maybe a committee chair?
Well, from my experience and observation, I can't say for certain because there may be some outliers here, um, in past years, but um, seniority does play a part. Um, on quite a bit in the structure of how our legislature works, or most state government bodies work, right? So, yes, I would say straight out of the box, a senior legislative member not only knows the ropes a bit more, right, or
Mm,
ideally, right, knows how to navigate. Ideally, would be admired in some regard and sought out by the rookies or the novices that are coming into the process, right? Knowing how to navigate things. A chair of a committee has quite a bit of authority, subject to the speaker and subject to the president, of course. So, as to what he or she may be able to do and what bills they will take up, how, this kind of stirring of the pot, I should say, in terms of what bills are being going to be agended and priority, but everything is subject and at the pleasure of the speaker and of the pleasure and the leadership of the president of the Senate. So, short answer, yes. I think there could be a little bit of a totem pole there, but there is an embrace to celebrate ideas and ingenuity, across the board, regardless of what year you are in. And there is a brotherhood or sisterhood in the body. I've witnessed it myself in terms of, bird's eye or, butt elbow, but to see how much like love and like expertise is shown to the younger ones as the older ones are aging out of the process and those who return. So there is give and take, but I think they understand the pecking order.
yeah, I would imagine it's fairly collegial within a party. Do you see any collegial behavior across party lines? Do you see that much in our highly partisan charged era we live in?
Somewhat, yes, I do definitely. On things where there's common tides and common threads like family, faith, um, our beautiful resources here in Florida, our the people, the heartbeat. Everyone has this like essence to do well and to produce what they believe is in the best interest for Floridians and for our state. There's a
Right.
deep like Floridian love, for those who are born a native here, and then those who move here and feel just as grandfathered in and actually serve in our legislative bodies because they've been elected to do so. Um, and also, we, particularly in the House, I think the Senate may, and I know in the past, I think some of us may have participated, but we have special days, like thematic days during legislative sessions. So, like Seersucker Day, Boot Day, Hoop Day, Lily Plitzer Day, where members and staff, and even sometimes other people who are aware and in the process or come visit the Capitol, will participate by dressing up or putting on, whatever the item is. To like show that camaraderie and like like you said, that collegial, like we're in this together and let's have a little fun too while we're working hard.
Right, right. Well, that's good to hear. It's been just in general, our country, we're in a tough place. I feel like, sometimes it's like, are we in the 1850s again? Because of how divisive we are. We're not really working together. Honestly, I think sometimes it really takes a threat, like an existential threat, to make us actually, like 9/11, we all got together for a while. We were very
Mhm.
close. But I would imagine that, like, if you were in an area where there was, let's say, a city, and you had people of both parties, and there was some legislation that would benefit that area, that's a great time for people of different parties to come together because they're dealing with the
Yes.
same, our people. We all get to benefit from it. So that seems reasonable. All right.
Right.
Let me pivot real quickly to a couple of quick questions. You said session had just ended, the 60-day session. When
Mhm.
when does the next session begin for the legislature?
Um, I believe it's the first Tuesday of March of next year. So we'll be doing like March to May this coming cycle. Because we just did January, we alternate. We just did January to March this year.
But am I wrong in thinking there are? I mean, we went up in January. We go up normally in January and February. That you're not in session, but the
Mhm.
legislators are on site. Explain that to us rookies, please.
Okay, so if they're on site, which they have a right to be because we're a part-time quote unquote legislature because they only gavel in for ideally 60 days unless special or extended or some kind of extraordinary session is called. But effectively, they're still elected officials, operating and overseeing and preparing for session as well as entertaining, district concerns and work operating in their districts. So they will come and go. So sometimes you may see somebody pop up that you wouldn't expect to be there because, oh, they're not gavelled in yet. Of course, we have our homegrown folks here in Tallahassee and Leon County and Jefferson that are closer approximate. But most times than not, when you see them and we haven't gavelled, it's because we have committee weeks
That that
that lead up to session.
that makes sense. If the
Yes.
committees are meeting, that makes sense because we come for Space Day. That's why I come. Space Day,
Okay.
and so
Yes.
yeah, the Florida Space Day event is normally January, February, and that's when the committees are meeting. That makes sense, and then the entire body is president for 60 days, March to May, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, but it's not
Right.
May
Yes.
yet.
Right. Right. And mhm.
I was just going to ask. 60 days is really, February, March, but you say we've just finished the 60-day session. Is that right?
Yes. Right. Well, because this year and if I misspoke, excuse me, but for this year it was from January to March, the
Oh,
60-day, and we alternate kind of starting early and then starting a little bit later, our traditional of March to May. That's where the May comes in.
oh,
Next year it'll be March to May. Hmm.
okay, that makes a lot of sense. So January, March, then March to May, then January, March, etc. Got it. That makes
Correct.
sense.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
What what do you, if we have young people watching, and they're new to how government really works, from your seat, you have all of these rich and important experiences about, what we call making the sausage, right? From you got somebody that has an
Hmm.
issue or a complaint or a priority, and it somehow ends up becoming something that is a law or a bill that's passed or funding. What would you say to kids that are just starting out that maybe are interested in becoming public policy people, either analysts or staffers, or somehow getting involved with helping our democracy? What are your thoughts, and what advice would you leave for them?
Yeah, well, get involved. Exactly what you said. That's exactly what they need to do. Get your feet wet, get your hands dirty, per se. The sooner, the better. There are a lot of opportunities that the legislature and that legislative entities and affiliations have had for many years that I, even as a Tallahassee resident right here, born and raised, was not even aware, like our page and messenger program, right, in the House, or the page program in the Senate, or Boy State, Girl State, 4-H, these big umbrella or Teen Pack, these very big, prominent, thunderous and great quality programs that allow students to come and to learn and to be immersed through partnership with the House and the Senate, and use their chambers and use their meeting rooms to actually engage in mock sessions and mock committees, an opportunities where the youth can learn the process and actually role play. And then sometimes they're blessed to meet members as they're bobbing and weaving through the process and through the very capital they're in. So, and I don't necessarily think that's any like a failure of the body itself, for getting the word out there to every single body. I think it's been a pendulum swish, of trying to do that better, because I know some of the people personally, and I know their heart's in the right posture, and they do their best to cast the net wide. It's a high commodity program, our page and messenger programs, but it's worthwhile, and they do their very best to accommodate each student or child that meets the qualifications and that can be there to give them the opportunity. So I would say learn as much programs like that, and then the ones that meet during the summer, as I mentioned, where they do mock sessions like 4-H, etc. I'm just, there's probably others too, but I'm just mentioning that, like Patriot Academy. I've seen some of these groups come through the body, and they bring their students a variety of ages, and like you brought your team, and they sit down in the seats of the members, and they learn the process. They hear from us. So immersing yourself in it, get familiar with our website. The House has done a great job, and the Senate has some complement materials too, where we break down the legislative process, like from how a bill becomes a law. Like, it starts with an idea. So you'll be surprised. I've even heard stories about children who've had ideas, and somehow they've been able to matriculate that idea to a House or a Senate member, and thus that there actually became a bill because the member was committed to the idea, to see it through, and believed in this young constituent enough to say this is worthwhile, and it's actually become law on our books here in Florida. So no one's too young to contribute, and everyone, I believe, is important to be a part of the process, however one sees fit. That's, respectful, of course. And so there's opportunities. We have internships. We have, I think, some fellowships. Of course, there's jobs, reoccurring. That could be a benefit long term for these students. But I would say also just coming to the Capitol and sitting in if they can. We've had homeschool groups. I know they have a little bit more of an advantage in that flexibility, but some of our local public schools and charter schools and private schools will also bring their kids like on field trips so that they can see firsthand, or sit up in the gallery when they're in session, or maybe even come quietly into our committee rooms. So I say exposure. Children, just like adults, need exposure. They need to be equipped that they have the access, and also be restored in that understanding of like civic engagement, right? And that what your citizenship means, what your constituentship means on a local, state, and federal level. But particularly talking about state government, I love to see all children, be a part. But I'm particularly, like, because I'm a local Leon County girl, and I grew up in these Leon County public schools. I for a long time, since I was like, where are the Tallahassee kids? So I'm glad to see there's more, because it's literally in their backyard, right? And I
Right.
would be saying this if it was in Pinellas County or Miami-Dade or Palm Beach for you. I'm like, proximity is everything, when it comes to opportunities, oftentimes, or at least being able to get there.
Right.
So I just want to encourage the kids that they're not too young, they're not too naive. They're all, whether they come from, like you said, a high caliber, financial background, or a lower one, or somewhere in the middle. It doesn't matter. I mean, I found myself very humble beginnings, lower class, middle class family, and so if it happened for me, it can happen for them. And I didn't even know about these opportunities until I was an adult working in the process. That, oh my gosh, they have this and that. But so they're doing their better to extend the reach, but sometimes it's still hard. They're probably inevitable to let everyone know, but it's out there. And sometimes it's just a matter of seeking it out and asking the right questions.
I so much
Yeah.
agree. Wonderful advice. I think that what the best we can do
Thank
is
you.
provide opportunities and help explain, the
Yes.
process, and then we let our young people do they got to do it, right? I can't make
Yeah.
anyone do anything, but I can provide opportunities. So
Right.
I have so much enjoyed our conversation today,
Me
Takesha.
too.
I'm thinking about, in my mind, I'm thinking about maybe asking you to speak to my class sometime, like maybe a Zoom sometime. I don't know if that would be
Yeah.
possible during the school day
I would
or
love
work day.
that.
But
I
I
love
feel
that.
like you're a great ambassador for what the analysts do and the important work behind the scenes to help, make the sausage turn words and thoughts and ideas into bills and laws. So I really appreciate your time. I just want to say thank
Thank
you,
you.
and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Kevin and Shauna. And I've really enjoyed our conversation too, our little bit of jazz here about the legislative process. And thank you for believing, in me and seeing the light that I carry and enough to invite me on your program. And thank you for constantly lighting the little fires in all our children.
Thank you.
So.